Alright guys, Tactical here back again today. Hope you're enjoying your Thursday so far. Today I wanted to talk about power rankings. ESPN yesterday came out with their CDL coach voted power rankings. The big question is how many coaches were actually interviewed for these power rankings, and a lot of, professional players and community members looking at these power rankings and thinking, does the logic here really add up? Of course, it's just made of average power rankings that whichever coaches they interviewed have given them. But in terms of a logical analysis here, especially at the top end, doesn't really seem to make too much sense on the outside view. But I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below as always, and we'll get into that in the coming minutes here. Like if you guys enjoyed the video, as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Subscribe if you are new for sure. Let's hop right into things. So firstly, wanted to mention this, you guys, this past weekend at the Dallas home series online, if you participated in the Draft Buff Fantasy Esports Draft Royale, congratulations, because we ended up taking home the W here. I think this was an average of the top 5 placings in each league. So TACRABS League 350 almost, absolutely smoking the competition, so proving that this is the the strongest community in Call of Duty esports. So congratulations. We will have to continue and defend our throne next weekend at the Chicago home series. I believe a similar thing will happen indeed. If you guys didn't get an opportunity to participate last weekend, the opportunity will come upcoming soon as well. So here we go then, ESPN Esports. How high did the Mutineers rise in this week's Call of Duty League coaches poll? Find out where they and the rest of the league stack up. So very interesting that they come out with this, and let's hop right into it. So the Florida Mutineers are the latest Call of Duty team to win a home series, in this case the first one held online. The Mutineers are perhaps the most surprising team to win a home series this season. They lost their first weekend their first game of the weekend against the Toronto Ultra. Kind of funny here as this tweet from CDL Intel says, initially this article read, against the 2-7 Toronto Defiant, who are of course the Overwatch League counterparts of the Toronto Ultra, owned by, I think, Overactive Media and that kind of Splice crew from back in the day. And then they came back through the losers bracket. Difficult to exactly say that given it's only GSL group play, so it's not really a losers bracket, but whatever. They go on and win the championship. They did this without Pristini, of course. So a lot of people, of course, asking, if you're going to look at a power rankings right now, how exactly do you do it? And I do think that the coach's perspective here is based to some degree on the online landscape and what teams are doing online compared to what they're doing on LAN. And I think you do see that really in where the Huntsmen are being placed, because it's no secret that the Huntsmen, in theory at least, are not going to be quite as good a team online as they would be on LAN, especially, partly at least due to the formal issues, him competing from Los Angeles. It's not ideal by any means, and some teams should definitely be better. So let's hop right into that then here. These are the the bottom 4 placing. So Guerrillas down here at number 12, Seattle Surge at 11, OGLA and Toronto Ultra. This is a really interesting one. OpTic dropped quite a lot here after they had a pretty good result at the Los Angeles home series that they hosted. Since then, of course, hasn't been so pretty. But honestly, around this middle tier, it is super, super competitive, and you never know what's going to happen one weekend to another. The fact that LAG are down here in 12th is quite interesting, but then again, who do you really put them above right now? OGLA did have a decent performance at the, Los Angeles home series. LAG really didn't, but they did look somewhat stronger maybe online more recently. Then again, they didn't actually win a series this weekend, I believe. They went 0-2, losing to the Florida Mutineers, and the first round they lost to the Dallas Empire. So it was a tough weekend. They even got forfeited one of those matches, right? So yes, they went 0-2 here in week 5. They're 1-7 on the season, but it seems to me like they're a better team than 12th. It's just, who do you put them ahead of, right? Do you put Seattle Surge last? Is that fair? Who knows? So that's what they've gone for in 11th here. Toronto Ultra in 9th is probably fair enough. It's just difficult when I look at these teams because Ultra, on paper, looks kind of good, and Bonta's been playing really well, Classic's been playing really well, and they beat Mutineers this weekend, right? So it's a really interesting team, Toronto, because I look at that team, and I see a team that can go Game 5 and win series against basically any team in the league. They're just nowhere near consistent enough, right? So it's an interesting situation with Ultra. They come here in 9th. So then let's move into the 5th through 8th position, and this is what it looks like. Paris down here in 8th. This is tough to say. I mean, the real interesting part of this, of course, is New York Subliners sitting in 7th, right? That is the big one, because Paris Legion sitting at 6-6 over the course of the season in terms of overall series count. They're a pretty good team on the whole. They can mix it up sometimes, but this weekend it wasn't so good for them. But you know, occasionally they're kind of like a Toronto to me. They can go game 5 with pretty much anyone, and they're kind of good at winning game 5s. Probably better Paris at winning game 5s than Toronto are. So in my opinion, probably makes sense to put Paris above Toronto right now in terms of that category of upset team that I talked about a while ago. But Subliners being 7th is the interesting part of this for sure, because this team, a lot of people would consider them the worst team in the league, as I would have done a few weeks ago. They made the change for Zero, they brought in Happy initially, and now they made this change to bring Mac into the squad. They tried Center out a little bit as well in place of Accuracy, but it seems like they've gone back on that. And clearly what this says is that the CDL coaches are looking at the Subliners squad and saying they're really, really strong right now, because this is based on not only placings, but it's also based on behind the scenes stuff and what we don't get to see in scrims behind the scenes and all of that kind of thing. So to what I understand, Subliners have been playing really, really well online with Mac just frying in scrims. And this is something which maybe you wouldn't expect to see in a LAN environment, but online, and of course the coaches, whoever was interviewed for this, I don't know if there was coaches for every team in the league, all 12 teams, or whether there was multiple from one, and you get some sort of bias here. Like, it's possible that Revan was interviewed and JP on the Subliners team, and then things get messed up. Who knows whether that's fully the case. So obviously take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt. But regardless, clearly in an online environment, the coaches think that Subliners are going to be a very strong squad. And it's very interesting indeed, because next weekend at the Chicago home series, the very first matchup of the weekend for Chicago, the home team, is against the Subliners. A lot of people would have gone into that and saying, oh, this is a clear-cut victory for Chicago, but looking at it through the lens of what the coaches seem to be suggesting from behind the scenes, Subliners have improved a lot, and I've kind of heard that as well. So if that is indeed the case, very interesting. Just the fact that they're 1-6 here, mixing out in the rankings with London and Paris, who are 4-4, 6-6, Mutineers at 9-6. That's interesting indeed. And let's of course mention number 5. So kind of glossing over London, they're 6th right now. You know, they could easily probably be 10th, right? There's teams, everything changes on a day-to-day basis. At least we'll have to see next weekend how things go for them. But Florida in 5th is interesting, right? They just won this last weekend's event, and the 4th place team, as I already mentioned at the start of the video, is the Chicago Huntsmen. So what's going on there? Mutineers have beaten the Chicago Huntsmen twice now when they've played them. I think maybe have Chicago beaten the Mutineers. Maybe that is the case at one point, but Mutineers, I'm pretty sure, have a positive record against the Chicago Huntsmen. Beat them at the Atlanta home series, now beat them at the Dallas online home series as well. So how can you argue that Mutineers is below Huntsmen? You definitely can, given their results against other teams and how they've performed in finals over the whole course of the season. So it's interesting. It's just the fact that this is probably done through a lens of, let's just average all the placings that the coaches gave us and make that into a list. However, when you look at these kind of lists, you have to be applying some lens of logic to it to make that make sense. And especially we will see that when we get into the 1 through 4th position. So Florida in 5th. Maybe that's fair enough right now, but they did win the last event and they've been pretty competitive. But it's tough to put Huntsman below 4th, to be honest. And even 4th seems kind of low here. Let's look at these top 4. So these are the expected top 4 teams that we have had. But in a LAN environment, this looked really quite different, right? We had FaZe number 1. Huntsman were a pretty clear-cut number 2 in most people's minds. Then we had Empire in 3rd place, given the fact that Empire had not lost to any team that wasn't Chicago or Atlanta in advance of this weekend, where of course they did end up losing to Minnesota. And once again, we have some interesting questions here. FaZe at the top is no issue to me. I think that's perfectly reasonable. They've been the dominant squad throughout this season so far. And online, we see no reason to doubt that they would continue in that vein, maybe even get even better, right? That's an option. We'll have to see how it goes next weekend in Chicago. So number 1 is fine. The 2, 3, 4 is kind of interesting to me because Chicago down in 4th. You can argue this, I suppose. They didn't look great this weekend, but you can argue that they looked better than Dallas Empire this weekend for sure, especially given who they lost to. Minnesota actually beat the Dallas Empire, so okay, does that do enough to get them above the Dallas Empire? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, right? But there doesn't seem to be like a logical lens has been applied to this kind of ranking scheme, because Huntsmen have looked better than Empire so far this season, and probably looked better on the course of it this weekend. So how you can argue the other way around is quite a difficult thing to do. And then Rocker, who were typically the 4th place team, they actually lost to Florida in the finals, who were down in 5th, but they beat the Empire, who were in 2nd here. And Rocker probably looked better on the weekend than the Huntsmen did, you could argue, or very, very similar indeed. And typically, the Huntsmen have been a better team than Rocker over the course of the season. So some pretty big and hefty changes around here just off this one online event. But I imagine a lot of these coaches are looking this through the lens of online competition. And in that lens, you can say, especially, let's just say this ranking that they've done here is expected future results. You could argue that the Huntsmen being in 4th is fair enough, given the expectations for how good this team is going to be online, rather than it being a top 4 based on the season so far and trying to weight different tournaments and all of that kind of stuff. So interesting situation. Intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below on this one. And these were a few of the responses to it then. So Frosty, of course, on the Mutineers, just won the previous championship. The CDL coaches are thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. You know, harkening back, I guess, to this meme that Slasher, I think, started and went around the community a while ago about, Joe C got thumbs up. Frosty kind of harkening back to that. So kind of entertaining. Clearly, Frosty not particularly convinced that they should be in 5th place here, having just won the most previous event. The ranking was determined based on an aggregate of votes from participating coaches. How do we know how many voters? Of course, we do not. Joey Nubsy says, I'm flabbergasted. Of course, his team not looking so pretty right here. Let me just scroll up 1 second down these tweets that I was looking through. In 11th, obviously, Joey's not too happy with that placing, but the rest of the teams as well doesn't make too much sense. And then Kismet comes out on the Paris Legion squad. There seems to be no sign of intelligent life anywhere. So this is coming from, Paris Legion, and we're down in 8th in this power ranking. But I guess the interesting part of it is at the top end. And what do you expect to happen going forwards? If there was a tournament that happens, tomorrow or something this coming weekends, what would you expect to see? And as Intel Call of Duty says, they've been frying in scrims with Mac, implying, to be honest, that they could be a very competitive team at could the Subliners. But if there was a 12-team tournament this weekend, is this about what you expect if the results had to be organised like this? Would you expect Huntsman 4th, Rocker 3rd? Difficult to say. I think Huntsman 4th is a reasonable perspective, but if there was just another tournament just about to happen, I imagine the Mutineers outplaces Huntsman again, to be honest, and how they've played most recently. But maybe we need another weekend just to solidify that in stone. And who knows exactly what's going to happen with the Atlanta FaZe and these teams right at the top of the echelon here. So intrigued to hear your thoughts on this down in the comment section below. Alec Arcetes, of course, this was a tweet that they did just after they lost. Online wasn't a problem, we just don't play right. So this was his perspective for sure. And I agree, they just weren't playing great Call of Duty when they lost to the Mutineers, but is there also an element to which they're not the best team online? That's definitely a thing, and I do think that some of the guys in that team, Scump especially, we've seen it on stream, things don't go his way necessarily on LAN, and excuses start to be made, and he starts to kind of mentally check out of the situation. Now, that doesn't happen for him on LAN, of course. Maybe I said on LAN there and I meant online. That's why he's mostly considered to be a better player on LAN than he is online, is, Seth Scumpy Abner. So, what is the difference here? And of course, we have the formal situation play from Los Angeles. That's not ideal by any means. I think that to de-rank Huntsman slightly in terms of their power rankings online is fair enough. Whether they deserve 4th right yet, who knows? And especially do they deserve 4th with Rocker and Empire above them in the current situation, when Empire really didn't look too good this past weekend, given all the hype around them being an online god squad. We'll have to see what happens next week. Intrigued to hear your thoughts down below. Like if you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new. As always, I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time.